Welcome to Monday Mornings. Just real quick, I want to thank the Friends for funding the Monday Morning series, and I want to ask if you have a device on you to put it on silent. And with that, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm really excited that we have this exhibit up for the month of April, and we're able to start with a presentation about the exhibit. So with that, welcome, Joanna Liss.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I realized that I made a little, mistake. I left something out because I am going to talk a little bit about the Chilean Arpilleras, which you can see a couple of up here. And they have a large political significance, which I'm going to tell you about. But in fact, this whole exhibit is Peruvian Arpilleras. They started in Chile, and then they moved on to Peru and some other places. And this is all my collection, which I've exhibited a couple of times before, but not in recent years. So for the last few decades, these have been sitting up in my attic, and I'm really glad to see them, just to see them again, and also to see other people appreciating them. So let me start. The pronunciation, it's a Spanish word, arpillera, because the LL, the double L in Spanish, is pronounced usually like more like a Y. And sometimes I'm told in some places more like a Z. But I say arpilleras, and that's what they are. They started off in Chile when there was a brutal dictatorship that began in 1973. And the democratically elected president, who was a socialist or maybe even a Marxist, he was ousted and killed. And then for the next decade, people were killed, many people. And they began to be called the desaparecidos, the disappeared. They were people that were taken from their homes or on the street or wherever and never seen again. And some of their mothers, or in some cases maybe wives, began to make these hangings that depicted the violence and the loss, and sometimes the individual person. I don't have any Chilean ones. These are pictures I took actually off the internet, and I don't know how well you can see them, but one's got faces of people on a tree, and the other has some, where are they? Truth and justice is what it says. And this book, I took the name for this presentation, Scraps of Life, from this book by Marjorie Agosin, who died last year. She was 69, and she is a Chilean, American, Jewish author, professor. She's been a professor at Wellesley College of Spanish and Latin Studies for about 30 years. She's a poet. She was born in the U.S., but was brought back to Chile with her Chilean parents when she was 3 months old. And she grew up in Chile, but then when the dictatorship came in, her family left. And she's lived in the U.S. since then, but returned to Chile many times and studied and worked with the Arpilleristas, the people that made these. And I got a lot of inspiration from reading her book. This book was published, I think, around 1987, and it isn't in print any longer. But she's written so many more books, and maybe part of the reason it isn't in print is because she wrote more and more. She wrote several more books just about these wall hangings, and I'm sure she incorporated a lot of what was in this book. So I have a copy here, and to me, the most interesting part is the testimonies of the women, which is the back part of the book, and there's about 20 of them. But like I say, I don't know how easy it is to obtain it, but you can at least take a look at it afterwards if you want. So, okay, so Scraps of Life, I think, is very appropriate because these were made literally from scraps of material, and sometimes, I have never seen any, but sometimes clothing, pieces of clothing from the people, rather, that disappeared. So they're very poignant and they're political, and they've been exhibited. Agostina had a collection herself of them. I've seen mention of exhibits in various parts of the country, and also they were part of the Biennale in Venice, which is a very prestigious art exhibit isn't even the right word. It's huge, and it's every 2 years. And in 2024, I almost said 1920. In 2024, that was part of the Chilean exhibit. There was a display of Arpilleras. I did see some. I think it was at Salem State in the 90s, and I think it was actually Marjorie Agostian's part of her collection, but I never did meet her. I wish I had. Okay, so moving on. Let's see if I remember how to do this. Okay, so the ones that are here on display, I've just divided roughly into 3 categories, but they're loose categories. The first few along that wall there are what I have come to call folkloric. They don't have any social or political significance except that they're documenting parts of society in a kind of whimsical way. And those are, I think I would leave that one with that group too. And this is just a couple of them. They're up there. And they, market scenes, harvest scenes, those were the typical ones that you would see in the marketplaces. Those were the first ones I saw. And I, according to my magazine article from 30 years ago, this is probably the only surviving copy of this, and I reread it a few days ago, and it reminded me of some of the things I had forgotten. It says I bought about 12 of them on my first foray. I should tell you a little bit briefly about my connection to Peru. My husband and I, Lauren, went to Peru on a trip in 1986, and we loved it. And then when we decided to adopt a baby a couple years later, in 1988, we chose Peru. And with a Peruvian adoption, you had to spend the time of the adoption process in the country. And one parent had to if it was a couple. So I got to stay there for a month. Lauren was there the first 2 weeks, and I just had the time of my life with my little 1-month-old baby, and going to marketplaces and buying Arpilleras and other crafts. And then in 1991, we went back and adopted another baby, and I spent a little longer there. And I was having such a good time that I didn't want to come home. But anyway, so those two, I would say folkloric, that, you probably find ones like those. But when I went back in 1991, they had expanded the themes a little bit, and you would find ones like, there's one with swimmers back there to the left of the window. I also saw some with nude beaches, but I I passed on those. I thought that was a little over commercialization and a little crass, and can you? Some of you have already looked at them, but the one to the right of the window, can people guess? Or it is Cinderella, and there were many others, but those are examples of the ones that I found again in the marketplace. And one thing about Cinderella that I noticed only a few days ago is that guess who's in the middle, more prominent than Cinderella, I think, is Prince Charming and in silver. And I thought that was interesting. And then when we were hanging them, Lauren pointed out to me that there were very few men in any of these. And he's right. And I guess it's, understandable because they were women making them, and who knows where the men were. And but this one, the one to the right of the door, that's a grape harvest. I think it's one of the most beautiful ones. And there are 2 men in that one, and except that the women are doing all the harvesting, the men are playing guitars. And then from there on, up until there, are all ones that I purchased from groups. Some of the Arpilleras worked on their own, and others, and maybe the first ones, worked in workshops, sometimes under the auspices of a government. I know there was one that was some German group that had sponsored it, and they would work communally. They'd make the figures and they'd assemble them together. So those are not necessarily made by a single person. Some of them are, and some of them aren't. And in 1991, when we were adopting Carolina, I decided, I read this in the magazine article too, I decided I need a project for the time that I was going to be spending after Lauren went home with Max, who was then almost 3 years old. So I decided I was going to do some more research into the Peruvian Arpilleras. And I did, and I met several different groups of women. 2 were sponsored by, one I think was sponsored by a group from the Catholic Church, and the other one I'm not sure. And then I met a family of Arpilleristas, a mother and her 2 young adult daughters. So those were the 3 groups that I collected from and worked with in 1991. And then I went back several other times just to visit. And of course, each time I had to get a few more Arpilleras. And I did exhibit them in the early 90s at the Unitarian Church in Marblehead. I had friends who were members, and I had them on exhibit, and I spoke about them. And then I exhibited them. I had a friend who worked for GBH. I exhibited them there. And then I exhibited them at my kids' nursery school. And after that, they've just been sitting in my attic. And some of you might have been, a few months back, there was a curator from the Quilt Museum in Lowell who spoke about political quilts. And I brought one of the Arpilleras just to show her. She was interested, of course, and she told me she did consider them quilts. So now I can think of them as quilts as well as Arpilleras. But I was fascinated to know that she considered them quilts as well. Okay, moving on. Let's see what we've got next. Okay, so eventually it evolved, the art of making Arpilleras evolved into these kind of offshoots. Christmas stockings, although that's the most bizarre Santa Claus I've ever seen. I can't figure it out. Most of these pictures I just got off the internet. They're readily available. These sweaters became a big thing, and they were, some of you might have even seen them, mostly for children, but I've seen some made for adults as well. That purse is mine. Somebody made it as a gift for me. Just a little purse. And Oh, my Christmas stocking, I didn't have a Christmas stocking before. Well, I had a little one, but it wasn't very nice because I'm Jewish and I didn't celebrate Christmas as a kid. But now I have my own Christmas stocking, and this one's got a more, I don't know if I'd say realistic or a more typical Santa Claus. But you know, the scene is like a harvest or a garden, and that's typical. And somebody, it was Sisters of Notre Dame, that was one of the groups I visited, made this and gave it to me. So here is, I don't know if it's one of the original, but it's a cloth book for children, I guess, and it's about a shepherd. And the person that made it wrote, just in a piece of paper that she stapled to this book, what all the different scenes are. So I don't know if this is the only Arpillera book. There probably are others somewhere, but it's the only one I've ever seen. Okay. And the Arpilleras are still available. You can find them online. Okay. Well, this one I've talked about already, but you can see a little more clearly the two guitar players and then all the women doing the work. And my favorite part, and it always makes me think of I Love Lucy, because they're stomping on the grapes, or I don't know what they're doing, probably stomping or swimming in the grapes. Wrong button. Okay, so then I met, as I said, these two groups that made more sophisticated and more thematic Arpilleras, and those start right over here, and it's it's this whole wall. And I never documented them and wrote which group made which one, so at some of them I have to guess. One group didn't do the crocheted borders that almost all Arpilleras have. For instance, these two. So I thought that those were all from the Grupo Humano Compacto. But then I discovered that there was another group that also made some. So, and some of these on the sheet that you may have, I guessed. I think I put question marks next to them because I'm not sure which group actually made them. But it was one of those two groups, either Mujeres Creativas, creative women, which theirs are all labeled on the back. So those were easy to figure out. Some of the others I'll just never know. So you can see a math class and a kindergarten. And I just love the hopscotch. People often notice the hopscotch and the girls dancing around in a circle. And yeah. And what else have we got? Those are here, by the way. And the beauty parlor. And if you look closely at it, well, you can see the mirrors. I'm not sure what they're made of, some kind of like mylar type material. And you can see scissors up here on the table, which are made out of like a leather-like cloth. So take a better look afterwards. This one I especially, well, I love them all, so. But this one, what is really neat about this one, it's a Christmas fair. And on the upper left, you can see Arpilleras for sale. There's 4 of them, and then somewhere in here there's another one at the table. And then they're selling various other things, jewelry. You can see the yellow says Arpilleras. What else? I can't read that one. Anyway, it's a Christmas fair. Just want to check my notes and make sure I'm not leaving anything out. Okay. Okay. Now, a lot of these people were quite poor, and they lived, some of them lived in these barrios or shanty towns, but in Peru they're called pueblos jóvenes. They are that means young villages is what it means. And it's people that have come from the villages, from the rural parts of the country, migrated to Lima and want to have a better life. But they don't have any money. So they build, did I have them in order or not? Let me just go forward for a minute. Okay. they built, oh, okay, there we are. They built first very rudimentary shelters, sometimes out of cardboard, sometimes out of plastic, sometimes wood. But it was basically just a little shack, and everybody lived in one room, and they didn't have running water, electricity. And so this one on the left is their building. So the people that are more established, they have been there for a while, they're building more substantial housing, and up higher on the hills, because each successive group that came would move higher and higher up these steep hills. So up on the hillsides are the more rudimentary, newer arrivals, and eventually, you know, they'd get some more money and they'd build more substantial things. There's still pueblos jóvenes now. I don't know where they are, because I think they must have run out of hillsides to occupy. And the one on the right is a water shortage. And those blue and red trucks are delivering water. You can see the hose. And you can see that the Andes is a very common element in the Arpilleras. Not always, but often you see the Andes in the background. But in this one, you can see the more upper class, high-rise buildings of the city itself. And then in the forefront are the people who don't have running water. And apparently, they didn't just deliver the water, you had to buy the water. So that's hard to fathom. Okay, next. So these are more scenes from those two groups. This one puzzles me a little bit. Maybe some of you who might be more fluent in Spanish than I am might help me figure this out, because as far as I can tell, this is a community kitchen. They're serving food. And what it says, as far as I can understand, is spicy wheat. Is that right? Spicy something, trigo, I don't know. Spicy wheat, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but anyway, that's what the menu is. And so they're serving food, and that's that one. And then this one, I love, is a women's group, and the way this translates is, must we be humble and submissive? And then jamás, never. I wish that was bolder, but, and then mujer valorate. I think it's like be valorous woman, something like that.
What is jamás?
Never. Never. Okay. Must we be humble and submissive? Never. Okay. And there are a couple that I have slides of that are not in the show for a couple of reasons. One is I have more than 40 of them, and we had space for 29. So I had to eliminate some. And some we had like duplicate scenes, like more than one marketplace, because they were common. For some reason, I have 3 different hospital scenes, 2 of which are here, and one of them is on the table, so that if you want, you can look at it afterwards. But there were a couple that I chose not to display, even though I think they're some of the more significant ones. So this is, once in a while, I didn't see very many of these, but this has 3 different panels, and it's talking about milk for the children. We need milk. And I think this is the one that says, yesterday, yesterday, now, and forever. So it's 3 different scenes of, we don't have milk, we're marching to demand milk, and then in the future, we have milk for everybody. So that's that one. I'm pretty sure I have that one here. This one is also not in the exhibit. Prices, well, translates as prices in the clouds, but sky high prices is what you would say in English. And there are the sky high prices of sugar and rice and flour and whatever else is depicted there. And meanwhile, the people are all lined up at the little grocery store, the gas station, and I don't know what they're waiting for, but they're waiting. hitting the wrong button. Okay, this is another one I chose to not display. Mostly because, as I said, I have 3 hospital scenes, and I wanted to show the other 2. But also because I'm hoping this exhibit will appeal to children as well as adults, and especially since it's right next to the children's room. And I think the story time may take place here too. I didn't want to show things that were too graphic that might be upsetting to children or hard for parents to explain to them. And since I had to eliminate some, this one, if you look closely, there's a C-section going on, and it's pretty graphic. And so I didn't exhibit that one, but it's there, right there. And this one, which is right over there, right at the end of this wall, this one I think is just one of the most stunning ones I had ever seen. It's also very heavy, literally heavy. If you look, you'll see that the dowel that is holding it is bending because of the weight of the arpillera. And what it depicts is a religious celebration that takes place in October in Lima. And the people do dress in purple. That's all I knew about it until this week, and I just Googled it and looked up and found out a little bit more. But that's a photograph. So look how realistically that is portraying the actual scene. It revolves around I think it's 17th century painting that was survived an earthquake in Peru, and then I guess it was considered a miracle. And so they parade through the city holding it. And it's, according to what I read, it weighs with its platform that the people carry it on, a ton. And I think it takes about 20 people to hold it, and they do it in shifts. So there are hundreds of people, and I'm sure it's a great honor to be asked to hold it, yeah. And the festivities apparently go on all during the month of October, and they do other things. They have music and they have food, of course. But this is a serious festival, and I was just really pleased to find that picture yesterday or the day before. And this is one of the other ones I chose not to include in the exhibit, but I think I have it here for you to look at. Enough violence, no more hunger. Some of you might recognize that chant in English, like the people united will never be defeated. Does that sound familiar if you ever participated in any marches in the 70s? Well, I don't know if it was in English first or in Spanish first, but the pink sign, that's what it says in Spanish. And then the others say, the olas vaquias, they carried pots, cooking pots, and I think spoons, and that was part of their demonstration. And it happened not only in Lima, but I guess maybe in other countries too. So what else does it say? Love, yes, fighting, no. And there's the military aspect at the bottom, and that's why I eliminated that one, although I love it. Oh, and one other thing about this one. I didn't tell you what arpillera means. It supposedly means either burlap or sackcloth, which I guess are considered the same, but I don't consider them the same. The backing on all of these is what I would consider sackcloth, and you can, here is this one. Sometimes you can even see through the material, the lettering from the original, potato sacks or whatever they were. But burlap, I think that this is what I consider burlap, and I thought this was a very, very effective use. They're probably marching in the Pueblo Joven, and so there's not a lot of greenery, right? So I thought that was very effective. And maybe somebody who knows textiles better than I do can tell me if there is a difference. When I look up a translation, it says sackcloth or burlap is the translation. Okay, now we move into the final section or theme, and that's the ones along the back side wall there. And I have a couple of stories to tell you. So these, at some point, I think I know which point, I'll tell you in a minute, I had the idea to have an arpillerista make a custom-made one for me. And it was, this may have been it, but I have several that are either drawn by Max, the original design, or made for Max. I think this was one that was made for Max later on. He loved taxis. And if you look at the material of the buildings, not the pink material, but the other two, those are actually our bed sheets that either we got another size bed or they were worn out. So I brought the material down to them, and you'll see there's, I think, 3 Arpilleras that they use them in. So, and this one was another design by Max a little later on. And I didn't remember that either until I read about it in my own article. It's the flags of the world. Oh, there's my article. Okay, now, this is my favorite story. The one on the left is, you can maybe see it says Ken E. Gil, or Jill. That's my brother and my sister-in-law. And it says, okay, H.O. It was made by Senora Monica Huamani. So I met Monica Huamani in Lima on the street. We were sitting in an outdoor cafe. She was peddling her arpilleras, you know, and the waiter tried to shoo her away, but I wanted to talk to her. And I asked her, so Ken and Jill had told us right before we went down to Peru to adopt Carolina, it was in 1991, Ken and Jill had just decided to get married, and they hadn't told anybody yet. And because our family weekend was going to be while we were in Peru, and we weren't going to be there, they told us and swore us to secrecy, which wasn't that hard. It was before the internet, so we weren't communicating too much, except once in a while by phone. And so I had the idea to make a wedding arpillera as a gift for them. And that's what I talked to Monica about. I probably drew it out or at least described it to her. I am by no means fluent in Spanish, so the fact that I was able to communicate to her and later on to others what I wanted is remarkable to me. And by and large, they all came out, you know, wonderfully. However, when Monica brought this back to the cafe to meet us when it was finished, I looked at it and I saw how wonderful it was. And then I saw on that building, which is a church, a cross and a cross. And I thought, uh-oh, I'm Jewish. Ken and Jill are Jewish. It's going to be a Jewish wedding. I don't really feel comfortable having the crosses on the arpillera, but I didn't know how to explain to her. I mean, she probably didn't know what, you know, being Jewish was. And then I felt that I might be offending her religion by because I asked her if she could remove the crosses, and she took out a safety pin and she picked the stitches off, and underneath the stitches were the 2 crosses in ballpoint pen. And then she had to confess to me that she hadn't actually made the arpillera, and I think she was really embarrassed because I had made a big deal of I like to know who the artist is, and I had her put her name on it. Well, it was her daughter, Norma, who had made it, and it didn't matter to me, and you know, I think it makes a wonderful story, and you can still, they've had it hanging in their bedroom ever since. I don't know if, I think you can still see the crosses barely, and it's over there, so you can look. So Max was really into making pictures and having them made into arpilleras. So a few years later, I didn't even remember this arpillera, but this is also for Ken and Jill, and they both are baseball fanatics. And one of them, my brother, is a Yankees fanatic. We grew up in the Bronx. And Jill who they met at a baseball game. It was an arranged date, and she is a devoted Red Sox fan. So that went into their whole marriage theme. They had a baseball themed wedding. I told them that Take Me Out to the Ball Game is a waltz, so they played that as their waltz. And so a couple of years later, they bought a house. And so Max drew this. It's a baseball game at Fenway Park, and you can see the score. The plane has we have a little plane, Loring's a pilot, and that's our plane. It has the call number for the plane. And if you can see, there's a little remnant of that same material that they use. So after this, all the ones that I had made were made by Norma, because she's the one that made them all. I don't know that Monica ever made any at all, but she was the one who was originally selling them. So the others, you'll see, some of them have Norma's name on them. Okay, so this is when we went to adopt Carolina. Max was almost 3. This one has taxis, it has an airplane, it has a supermarket, and it says a souvenir or a memory for Max City. Then I had this one, my Carolina. Both kids were born in Lima, but Carolina's birth family is from the Andes, the Amazon, the jungle. And so I created this design for her, which is Carolina of the jungle, paddling down the Amazon, surrounded by all of these animals that are labeled in Spanish, of course. And both of these have hung in their childhood bedrooms. They're still hanging there. And this one, there's that material again. This one was made for my parents. And it hung in their kitchen for many years. And this one is in 3 sections, like several of them are. So the top third is my parents and myself and my 2 siblings in the Bronx growing up. The middle section, we all have spouses. So Loring and me on the left, and Max and Carolina. And then at that time, Ken and Jill had 1 child. Now they have 2. And then Alan, my sister Wendy, and her husband Alan, they didn't have any kids at that point either when this was made. They now have 2 kids. And all the kids, of course, are grown. And this was like 35 years ago. And the bottom section is sitting in our living room and the sofa. I think it's a table, I'm not even sure. And the scene at the bottom right, the part of the scene, is our family making a circle, holding hands around this enormous tree. And that was a true incident. We had, on one of our family weekends, we had gone, I don't remember where it was, somewhere in Massachusetts, Western Mass, I think. There's this famous tree that is so wide. And so that depicted that memory, that tree. Here's another one by Max. And this one is a double. He drew a picture that was those proportions, so they had to make it double. This is like directly from a drawing of his. It says, ding, ding, toot, toot. There's a train, there's a seesaw, there's a cactus, there's a picnic, the hot air balloon with the people holding the ropes, and yeah. And that one is here, but I chose not to because I have so many that relate to Max, and that would take up 2 spaces for other ones, so I chose not to hang it. And this one also has an interesting story, which is a kind of mystery. Well, you might have looked at it already, so you might know, but if you don't know, can anybody guess what this scene depicts? No, it's actually the North Shore Music Theater. And it says Macbeth, and April to May 1993. We had hosted people from the music theater for a number of years, and that year, Lady Macbeth was staying with us, and she saw my Arpilleras, and she ordered one for herself. And this is what they made. And I never saw it again after she left. And I only have this picture of it, but I think it's a pretty nice depiction. Some people are holding hands. There's ushers taking people down the aisles. There's all kinds of wonderful things. But here's the mystery. I recently tried to find the woman and maybe even the Arpillera. So I looked up the Nostra Music Theater, and they had a list of every production over, since the 1950s or 60s, whenever they began. And I did find a Macbeth, and that was in 1998, and it had the name of the woman. So I emailed her, and she didn't remember. She was very apologetic. She said, "I'm sure I had a wonderful time staying with you. The Arpillera must be someplace in storage because I've moved around a lot, and it's probably at my brother-in-law's house." And I think she felt terrible, so of course I felt bad too. But then when I looked at this picture to make this slide, I saw that it was 1993, and her name wasn't Jean. It was Nell, I think, or D. Nelson. That was her name. She played Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, at the Music Theater in 1998. They don't list any Macbeth in 1993. I cannot figure it out. Probably never will. So it's a wonderful Arpillera. It makes a great story, but I don't know where it is or how that happened. Okay.
Joanna?
Yeah.
How do you communicate with the person who makes?
With a little difficulty. Yeah, I would write, I would draw a picture, or have the person who was ordering it draw a picture, and send it down to Lima to our adoption lawyer, who became our friend, and and tell him, he spoke English pretty well, and I told him what I wanted. He would meet, I don't know if it was Monica or Nora, or I don't know, he would meet with them, pay them, give them the instructions in Spanish, and then he would send the Arpillera when it was finished up to us. And I had this little enterprise going for a few years. That's where that one came out of. And this is, I don't know if any of you knew her, KR. Her name is KR. She's deaf. She's a deaf educator and had been a friend of ours. And she asked to have one made that depicted sign language. So that's this one. And that's another one that I only have this picture of. I really wish I don't even know how many I had custom made, but there were quite a few. I remember there was one of a dentist. I think he ordered it for himself in his office. And there were bar mitzvahs, there were anniversaries and weddings. That's Max, a long time ago. I've lost track of all the ones, and I really wish I had kept better records on all of the ones. Some of them I had to remember through that same article that reminded me what I had written 30 years ago. So this is the hospital one that is actually, it was a coincidence that I bought this, because I only realized afterwards that this is actually the hospital that Max was born in. Maternidad, it's the women's hospital, maternity hospital in Lima. So I especially, wanted this one. No graphic C-section in this one. And Max, proudly, I think, holding up the Arpillera of the hospital that he was born in. And this is the last one in the show. That's Max and Carolina, this is on our porch, each with an Arpillera that was made for them. So that's the end of the presentation, except for one thing. So where is it, Lauren? So there's one Arpillera that we do look at every day. It hangs over our fireplace in our living room. And this was made by one of those groups. I remember when they brought it out to us, and I said, no, I can't take any more. And then, of course, I did. And So it's a market, and it's just stunning, the amount of detail in it. So that's the one we do see every day. And the ones of the kids are in their rooms. And we have 2 grandsons now. So there's one there that I didn't even mention, but it's on the wall. It's a car race. So I'm hoping, I actually gave it to our 3-year-old grandson already, but then I took it back for this. And then I'm hoping that our other grandson's family takes the long one that Max drew, but that's up to them whether they want to display it as double size too, so I don't know. So I hope you'll take a little time to look at the Arpilleras that are hanging. I know some of you did already. But if any of you have questions, I'll try to answer them. But I also want to just mention what I have here. Some of them I've shown you already, the book. Some of these are the ones that I had slides of but didn't include. Yeah. And then there's these little cards, which is just another offshoot, tiny little Arpillera-like things that I bought mats for, and they're just cute. Yeah. And I just wanted to mention that as much as I love the Arpilleras, there are other crafts that Peru is famous for. And some of the Arpilleras are fairly new. I mean, it's 50 years, 60 years since they were first created. So it's a really modern art form. But some of the Peruvian crafts, like weaving, go back hundreds of years. And I did meet some of these artisans too, the ones that I bought these from. This is just, this family, not this artist, but another one, his uncle, I think it was, had an exhibit of his weavings at the Peabody Essex Museum back a decade or so ago. So it's an illustrious family. And then these, I only had one. I think there's another one in my bag. I'll look. These are gourds that are etched and then rubbed with ash. And you can still find these in the markets and online as well. And I'll look for the other one. Some of them are incredibly detailed and sophisticated. The ones that are more like a naive style are done by the children as they're learning to do it, and then as they get older, they go on to make more detailed things. So, and the one that I thought I brought, which I'll look for in a minute, yeah, see if it's in one of the baskets, is just incredibly detailed. And we met that family as well, and then we met them again 15 years later. No, I might have just left it behind. And last, this is called a retablo. It's like, well, the original ones were like miniature altars, that people could carry around, so they had scenes of Jesus. But then again, like the Arpilleras, they turned into a more commercialized version, and also had harvest, and there's a shepherd here, there's a condor at the top. Yeah, some of them are small. Some of them are smaller than this. Some of them are huge. And some of them have been exhibited also in museums. And I came across one in 1991 that was huge, bigger than me. And it looked wonderful, I mean, it was just amazing. And then when I got closer to it, I realized that the scenes were helicopters and people shooting, and it was a massacre. And there had been, Peru didn't have the degree of repression by the government that Chile and Argentina did. But there was violence in Peru in those times, and that's what he was depicting. He was depicting the violence with the people, the terrorists, and then the government fighting the terrorists, and the people caught in between and sometimes massacred. And yeah, well, that's it. Any more questions? I know somebody had one here. Yeah.
Yeah, I wondered, in Peru, do they decorate their homes with these?
No, not that. That's a good question. No, not to my knowledge. I don't believe they do. Even with the workshops that I went to, that I visited in the Pueblo Joven, they didn't have any on display. There were tables and people were working on them and piecing them together as a group. But I don't think any of them were on display, even in that space. So yeah, no, I think it's just, foreigners who, the Chilean ones, because of the Chilean ones were actually smuggled out of the country, and so to memorialize their loved ones that were lost, and also to process their grief, I think, and to let the world know what was happening. So I don't know if people sometimes got caught, but they were not on sale or on display any place. Now they are, but yeah.
Can you tell us about what you're wearing?
As many Peruvian things as I could find. Well, this actually, okay, well, I have a woman that I met who makes things out of pieces of fabric, a lot of cashmere sweaters, but all kinds of materials. So I asked her if she could make me something, and this is one of several. I have about 6 of them with different combinations of material. The parts, these parts are from a Peruvian sweater. The other parts, the blue and the purple, are pieces of my mother's clothes. After she died, I had the idea to use parts of her clothing in this way. And I had them made for my sister, my sister-in-law, Jill, and the nieces. And my sister thought it was creepy to wear our mother's clothes after she had died and having cut them up. But she eventually came around and decided she liked it. So sometimes when they come to visit, both my sister and my sister-in-law wear theirs. I think the nieces, actually I think this one was Carolina's. My daughter's originally, and I think she gave it back to me because she never wore it. But yeah, I have others. Not all of them are made with Peruvian, and not all of them are made with my mother's clothes. But yeah, and these are just leggings. They were very popular in Peru at the time. I just got them in the marketplace. Hi, Lee.
I just think this would be the most wonderful exhibit at the Quilt Museum.
I think they might be interested. I think they actually might be interested in my donating my collection. I have to decide at some point, what to do with these. And now that I've put this all together after about 30 years, of course I want to do it again. So I've been thinking about museums that might be interested. And I've thought of some of you might know the Fuller Craft Museum, which is a wonderful place. And the Wenham Museum and the Quilt Museum. So I think I could probably, interest them to do at some point. And then I really do have to decide what to do with most of them eventually. So
Penn might be interested too.
I wonder, yeah. Any more questions? Okay, well, feel free to take a look at them. Thank you. And also look at these.